I believe that every day of your life is important. And I think this month is important. I think this year is important. And when we have chapel speakers come, sometimes I think they talk down to you. And I think right now is significant, and you've had significant experiences in your life right now that when you look back on, maybe you don't feel them now, but in 5 or 10 years, you're going to think, wow, I've had that. Because God uses the stories of your life to mold you into who you are. It's like God is using you to write a book. But the book is John Cook. And John's going to fill it up with his 80 years, maybe 90 years. And hopefully that book will draw people to God. They will see John in the book about John Cook. A number of years ago, my brother-in-law, who was on the verge of being a pastor, said to my father, and my father-in-law was just a kick of a man, and he said, tell me some stories about your life that I can use. My father-in-law looked at him and he said, use your own stories. Huh? Use stories from your life. Don't use stories from my life. And he took that to heart. So far this year, you've heard from Mrs. Cole and Mr. DeWitt and Mr. B. And I don't know if you caught a theme with Mrs. Cole and Mr. B. Mrs. Cole, who came from a Muslim family, when she told her family that she was a Christian, the father said, "You are no longer my daughter." When Mr. B told his family that he was a Christian, they said, Dad said, "You can no longer live here. Where are you going to spend the night?" For the cause of Christ. Mr. DeWitt told the story of how when he was 7 and he was performing, remember he wet his pants and had to walk off stage like this. Well, that had nothing to do with this, did it? But it had nothing to do with for the cause of Christ, okay? Yeah, he wet his pants for the cause of Christ. There we go. All right. Because it was in church, right? I think it was doing a Christmas production of some sort. All right. So, I have this written down and I can't read it. You'll have to forgive me. What you know about me is that you know my role and you know some of the things I do, but you don't know my story. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit my story here today. And basically we're going to talk about God's Word and how each of us becomes a story of the testimony of God's faithfulness, how we live in the promise of redemption, and the story unfolds. My book is probably 2/3 full. Okay? I've got some more blank pages. The story's going to unfold. Your book is maybe, what, 1/5 full. But the first 1/5 of the book is significant. Your story right now is significant. Well, I'll show you some ridiculous stuff. Okay, my theme verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I do not understand the will of God. Period. I never have, I never will. I'm along for the ride. However, in my ways, I need to acknowledge Him, and God directs. So, I was raised in, right about there in northern Michigan. There's not much up there. There's trees and wildlife, and in the entire state of Michigan, 3% of the population sits up here. So, you can go forever and not see people. And notice it's just a short ways from Green Bay. Green Bay is the center of the known universe. And if you haven't noticed, all roads point to Green Bay. No, they do. Because if you're in Seattle, you can drive from here to Green Bay, right? And if you're in New York, you can drive from New York to Green Bay. And if you're in Miami, you can drive from Miami, right? So all roads lead to Green Bay, right? Well, we're getting to that point, okay? So he thought we were talking football. Well, we're talking that too, all right? So I haven't always been old. I started out as a child, and didn't have hair then either, okay? And then I was the youngest of 3 brothers. Now, if you're an older brother, pox on you, all right? There's a special place. Older brothers pick on younger brothers, right? If you're an older brother, you've been blessed. If you're a younger brother, my heart goes out to you. So I had these 2 older brothers who made life miserable for me growing up. But when I was a kid, every summer we went to this place. Now this is the place where I continue to go in the summer, and it is the place where I get back to normal. In Bellevue, you can get a little goofy. Your priorities can get wrong, where all of a sudden things take priority over people, over relationships. And so I go back here and I try to get back to normal, and it is a cathartic place. Last summer I went there and I took an entire day. I read the book of Romans and I prayed. And it was wonderful. My wife thought I was crazy. She, weren't you lonely? I said, oh, it was fabulous. But growing up, this is me in 4th grade. I learned to water ski. And I have this picture because if you look at the right eye, my right eye, your left, looking on the left, when water skiing or snow skiing or snowboarding or wakeboarding, if you're heading toward an object and you know you're going to run into it, I think you have 3 options. Either you fall forward, or you try to catch the object, or you fall backward. Now, 2 of these are a good idea. One of them, 2 of them are a bad idea. One of them is a good idea. Okay? Right? So you're on skis and you're heading toward a tree. Do you want to catch the tree? No, okay. You want to fall back, right? Well, I just learned how to water ski. I let go of the rope too late, and I'm heading toward a rowboat. And in my infinite wisdom, I'm going to catch the rowboat. And I caught the rowboat, and I put a face plant in the side of the boat. And it hurt. But when I was in 4th grade, I had a lot of freedom. And I had access to a little boat and a little 3-horse motor, and we had gasoline, and we had firecrackers, and we had matches, and a lake at our disposal. And folks, there are significant moments in each of our lives, and this is one of those significant moments. Now, I'm going to illustrate a significant moment as a book, because your life is a book too, right? So, here. Okay, God is writing a book with your life, all right? So, we would catch frogs. And if you caught a frog and put a firecracker under it, it wouldn't move until, and the frog would jump. You could also take a frog and pry the firecracker in its mouth. I know, this is horrible, isn't it? And we would light the firecracker, and boom! and the frog's jaw would just flap. Another significant moment. Pretend, Joey, this is a book about your life, all right? All right, not that book. Just in general, I'm giving you a book, all right? Not that one, my friend, okay? Okay. Gasoline and a coffee can are not a good idea because we also had crayfish. And so we would take crayfish and do all kinds of funny things with them. We would get them mad and put firecrackers in their pinchers. You who are juniors and seniors know it's called a keliped, right? And the crayfish would hang on to that thing and boom, the firecracker would go off and this thing would go like this, you know? So we decided you can boil lobsters and you can boil crayfish in water and eat them, right? So we decided let's boil it in gas. But gas doesn't boil. Gas ignites, right? So we put the crayfish in the can of gas, and I had the match near the lid, and it didn't light, so I blew on the match into the can. Dumb idea. Fourth grade boy. Woof. Okay, it was like this. Killed the crayfish, big explosion, okay? That night at dinner, we ate at this place, this lake home, with my cousins and aunts and uncles for 3 weeks. We're all together, a whole bunch of people. I'm sitting next to my dad, and he says, "Larry, something's wrong with you." Okay? And he turned to my brothers, and he says, "Guys, look at him. Something's wrong with him. Look at him." And what older brother isn't going to say, "No, he's fine. Yeah, he's always been that way, you know. He just looks stupid." Okay, as an older brother would, all right? My dad says, "Hey, you don't have any eyebrows." I said, "What? You don't have any eyebrows?" You know, but they were blonde anyway, but they were gone. And he says, "No, look, you don't have any eyelashes either." So the next question is, well, what have you been up to? Nothing. Right? Nothing. We're just having fun. No. What did you do? Oh, yeah, I had a little explosion. A little? Oh, yeah. How much? Oh, like that much in a can of what? A can of coffee? Okay, no more gas. No more matches. Taking them from you. But it didn't quite end there. We found out that if you took gas and you poured it on the lake and took a match and lit it, you could get the lake to burn. You get a fire on the lake. And when you're in 4th grade, that's cool, right? And you guys are going, "That's really stupid," because you're wise and you're okay. So that was important because then I realized your life is a book, all right? And God is using you to write His book. I realized that destroying God's creation wasn't a cool thing. And I really realized that taking care of creation, being a steward that God has asked us to be, to go back to that body of water and say, this is God's creation. I need to care for the animals that are there and the plants. And I was concerned about pollution and pesticides. And it kind of led me into a college major because of my love for this body of water. And then I kind of got into limnology, which is the study of fresh water. And I enjoyed that. So then I did end up growing up, and I left northern Michigan and went to Illinois, and I went to a place called North Park University. Now, where's Mr. Reynolds? All right, Mr. Reynolds is considering North Park University. And in here, I wanted to become a naturalist in the National Park Service. And started on a career toward that, and that included taking lots of biology. And then another significant moment came, and have you ever, I'm going to wake him up here, right there. Gotta wake up, okay. All right, better stand back here and keep the people from sleeping, all right? So I'm in college and I see this woman walking, and my knees got weak. And I said, wow, I don't know who she is, but I'm going to ask her out. And I did. I went up to her, I introduced myself, and I said, would you like to go out with me on Saturday? In her foolishness, she said yes. I have no idea why she said yes. Well, that led to getting married. And the young man that she's with on the left, that's me, before I turned old and cranky. Okay, and we got married, and in Mount Vernon, north of here. And I was actually teaching in Illinois, so we moved back to Illinois for a year, then we moved to Salem, Oregon. Then for some reason, God directed us toward to Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis. And we started to have a family. And this is the one on the right is a little over 3, and the one on the left is year and a half. Okay, life was good. We had a home, I had a garden, I had a job, we had kids, we were involved in church leadership. Things couldn't have gone better. We were just having the time of our life. And then another profound, significant moment came. Again, these moments are like chapters in a book. And so your life is a book, or like a book. Oh, excuse me. And we, in this significant event, we were expecting our third daughter, and she was not born on time. And so a week after birth, or her due date, the doctor said, we're going to induce labor. And they tried to induce labor, and it didn't work. And they said to me, let's stop this. We're going to go home, have a good night's sleep. Come on back tomorrow morning. We'll try it again. I went back the next morning. My wife is in the hospital. They tried an induction. The baby's heart rate plummets horribly. And so the doctor said, we got to do an emergency C-section. So I rushed my wife into surgery. I waited. 40 minutes after, the doctor comes out and he looked at me and he said, we need to talk. Now, when you're expecting a doctor to come out and say, congratulations, but the first words are, we need to talk, my heart sunk. And so we went into a room and he said, you have a daughter born, but she has severe birth defects. You can't see it all here, but you can tell she's hydrocephalic. She's got a very large cranium. She had a number of anomalies. Doctor said, we're close to Minneapolis. We've got to get her immediately to a major university hospital. I said, okay, do what you must. So they took her into a hospital. They ran a bunch of tests on her. At 3 in the morning, I got a phone call, and they said, Mr. Anderson, your daughter has stopped breathing. What do you want to do? And I said, please put her on life support. I'm coming in. So we went in. In the morning, they told me all that was wrong with her. And I said, what do you recommend? And they said, she will live in a vegetative state her entire life. I said, okay, why don't we take her back to her mother, and let's remove life support, and then she'll die. So they did that. So 32 hours after she was born, they removed life support, and she lived another almost an hour, and she died in our arms. So our family of 5 now became a family of 3. This was in March of 1980, April of 1985. Well, then another significant moment came. And this is 7 months later. I'm teaching biology in Minnesota, and we get a letter from this place. And they say, hi, we heard about you. And I'm going, how do you hear about me? Here's an application. We'd like you to fill it out. So I filled out the application somewhat flippantly, and I sent it in. And my last day of school in Minnesota, they called and they said, it was a Friday, they said, we'd like you to come out Monday for an interview. All right. So I flew out here and interviewed. And a week later, they called and offered me the job. I said, we got to think about this. I said, I'm not in the frame of mind to move. We just lost a daughter 7 months ago. We own a home. We can't sell it and move now. It's just, now is not the time. So the person who called me was the superintendent. He said to him, we're not going to accept that as an answer. We're going to give you another week to think about it, because we're calling you to Bellevue Christian. No one's ever called me to a place before. I've been offered contracts, but no one's ever called me to a place. So I said, well, we'll pray about it for another week. And we did. And both my wife and I felt very positively that it was not the right thing. We were not supposed to move. And so we called him on a Wednesday, and I went into the separate room to make the phone call. That was in the day before cell phones had landlines, so I called up. And I said, we've been thinking and praying about this for a week, and we will come. Wait a second. I went in saying, we're going to turn them down, and I said, we will come. So I walked out and I said to my wife, honey, I accepted the job. And she said, it must be the will of God. So we quickly listed our house. We quickly sold it. We quickly packed up all that we had and our kids and came to Bellevue Christian. I was here a year. You know, my very first class, one of the students I had was someone named Kim Postma. But she was Kim Franklin back then. And she was a good student then, too. Later. That's the other chapel presentation, okay? So, all right. Another significant chapter in your book and mine is this is Rebecca. And we, after being here a year, we decided to return to that lake in the Midwest. And so before we left our home in Sammamish, we were in the driveway and we prayed, you know, Lord, thank you for this opportunity. Grant us travel safety. Thank you for this time to be with relatives and just help us have a good time together. Drove across the country, had a great time driving home. We were going to drive through the night. We stopped in Fargo, North Dakota. It was a horrible thunderstorm. We stopped under an overpass as the thunder and lightning went over. And it was about 9 o'clock at night, and the girls were getting ready for bed, and we prayed with them and sang with them and kind of tucked them into bed. And the next morning, we were in a car accident, and Rebecca was thrown from the vehicle and killed instantly. She was crushed. And I was in the car, and I looked all over for her, and I couldn't find her in the car, and I was shouting her name, and I ran away from the car about 15 or 20 feet and found her body. Someone was passing by on the interstate. They stopped, and they gave us an old blanket. And as a parent, you wrap your children in a blanket, so we wrapped Rebecca in a blanket. Sat along the side of the road, and sometimes God does some amazing things. And looking back on it, now I realize how profound it is, because when Rebecca was dedicated, we sang a hymn. And the hymn says, Jesus, friend so kind and gentle, little ones we bring to thee, grant to them thy dearest blessing. Let thine arms around them be, now enfold them in thy goodness. From all danger keep them free. From all danger keep them free. Thou who didst receive the children to thyself so tenderly, grant to all who teach and guide them wisdom and humility, vision true, to teach them noble, to keep them noble, love to serve them faithfully. I was going to sing this for you, but I can't sing it, okay? So then grant to us a deep compassion for thy children everywhere. May we see our human family free from sorrow and despair. And behold thy kingdom glorious in our world so bright and fair. So folks, we prayed for travel safety. We prayed that night, the previous night, for travel safety. How do you reconcile our prayers with our tragedy? Here's what I've concluded, and I had to wrestle through this, is that our life is with such blinders, and we really see it all as being here on earth. But we live for an eternity. We live to be in the presence of God. And our 60 or 70 or 80 or 90 years are so short compared to an eternity. What God has promised us is a hope of heaven. What God has promised us is heaven with no sorrow, all joy, complete fulfillment. That's what we're promised. We're not promised an easy ride here on earth. And so, folks, after Rebecca died, having lost 2 children in a year and 9 months, I've been told that the hardest thing a person has to do is to bury their own children. I don't know, but I've done it twice and I don't like it. I don't like putting my children in the ground and putting dirt on top of them. That's horrible. So I went into a very, very deep depression. And my wife and I were in psychiatric care for 3 years. Some of us are in depression right now. Some of us have been through depression. It's horrible. It was hard to get out of bed in the morning. To choose clothing for the day was exhausting. By the time I got in the car to come to work, I was working here, it was like I am spent. And I worked, and the goal was to make it to the end of the day. And I'd get home and do nothing. I would eat and sleep. You sleep and you're not rested. And there's no joy in Mudville. So people would on Wednesday be talking about what they're doing on Friday. Hey, let's do this on Friday. And going, Friday, I'm trying to make it to 5 o'clock today. They'd say, what are you going to do at Christmas break? Christmas break, are you kidding me? I can't even think that. It was just, I felt like I was dragged behind a pickup. People would say horrible, horrible things. See, in our culture, we don't do well with grief. People would say to me, well, put on a happy face. A happy face? I have no happy face. They'd say, well, snap out of it. Snap out of depression, as if I want to be here. Let your light shine. One person said to me, as a Christian, you shouldn't be sad. Do you remember what Jesus said to his disciples before he was crucified? My soul is exceeding sorrowful, even unto death. Was Jesus sad? Yes. It was a slow, arduous journey, my friends. And these folks really helped. And you guys know Miss Bennett and Mr. B. Okay, Mr. Hagen, you guys know as a substitute teacher. Okay, he had his white hair now, but he was a history teacher here. You guys have had Mr. Hagen as a sub, right? Okay. You guys know Mr. Hibbert, okay, Mr. Olford. Mr. Perkins, I put him up here because you guys who are wrestlers, you honored Mr. Perkins before Christmas at the Iron Sharpens Iron, and he taught science here for years. And you guys know Mr. Royce, you don't recognize him, but that's what he looked like back then. And then Mr. Ulrich, who comes and substitutes regularly, and then that's Mr. Alstein. You're kidding me, that's Mr. Alstein. Yeah, that's Mr. Alstein. Okay, so Mr. Alstein would come by and he would say to me, so, how you doing? So this is as after Rebecca died, like 2 minutes. How you doing? And he asked me, how you doing? Oh, how you doing? So finally I said to him, my grief wasn't good, guys. It was raw. It was just right out there. And I said to him, Stephan, I'm doing crappy. But I didn't say crappy. I said another word. And I said, I'm going to be crappy, but I didn't say crappy. But I said, I'm going to be crappy for a long time. So just pray for me, okay? And he said, I will. And he did. And Mr. Hagen, bless his heart, he said, if there's anything I can do, would you please let me know? I'll even enter your grades in the grade book. Well, if you know Mr. Hagen, that wasn't his strength area, is making sure his T's were crossed and his I's were dotted. He was but he was willing to do the thing that he liked least and do it for me. He said, I'll even do that for you. Because he could see me. I was barely hanging in there, okay? So, Bellevue Christian was marvelous, and then so was our church home. They let us grieve. They let us be raw. They let us just kind of hang out there. And folks, they were accepting. They didn't say a lot of foolish things. So what I didn't tell you is that when we lost Rebecca, my wife was 7 months pregnant. No, 6 months pregnant. And so we had Rebecca, we had Britta. So we have a 6-year-old and then an infant. And then another significant moment came. Again, this is like your life. All right? And God is using you and the stories of your life to point people to Him. So we decided that we were going to have more children. And my family didn't like it. They said, you've already lost 2. We don't want you to go through more pain. But we felt it was really, we just felt the call of God to say, you need to have more children. And it was just plain as the nose on my face. And my wife, she and I both agreed. So we had Nathan, there's Nathan and Britta, and then we had Kara. This is, I'm really exciting at night. This is my typical posture. And then these kids grew up. And it's really like we have 2 families. We had an older child, and then we got these 3 younger ones all kind of bunched together. But these guys grew into a larger family because my wife comes from a family of 9 kids. And so when you take all these 4 plus our 2 in heaven plus all these other things, you get quite a conglomeration of people here. And